The mountains of the Tour de France often define the race.
And Vingegaard is the man to go.
This year, there is more climbs and less time trialling than in recent memory.
And here it comes, and Tom Pidcock is the man who accelerates.
Big ascents run right from the start of the Tour through to the very last competitive day.
Annemiek van Vleuten now goes on the attack on La Super Planche de Belfi.
And in this video, I've picked out 10 of the key climbs where this race is going to be won or lost. Let's get into it.
A man who packed fish for a living. Well, he's just landed a big one. That is amazing.
Before we crack on though, don't forget we'll have every stage of the Tour de France and Tour de France Femme avec Zwift live and uninterrupted on GCN Plus throughout July. As well as daily highlights and replays available, we've got the Breakaway, which delves into pre and post stage analysis of every stage, and on the rest days we have our World of Cycling show where we really get into the debate of what's happened in the action, whether it should have happened or who was looking the strongest, and we really have a good conversation about the race itself. So you can be sure on GCN Plus we'll cover every single angle of this year's Tour de France. Our first major climb to look out for at this year's race is the Jaizkibel, coming in the finale of stage 2. For those of you familiar with the classic San Sebastian, this is the same climb used in the closing stages of that race, and the Tour de France stage mimics that finish, cresting the climb and descending down to the line in San Sebastian. The Spanish climb, found in the Basque Country, gains around 450 meters altitude in 8.1 kilometers, an average gradient of 5.3%. I've actually raced up it myself, and it really is a proper classic. The steeper pitches come just after the halfway point where attacks usually fly, and this will be a key battleground in the Tour's opening week, so be prepared for fireworks. Also, unlike the races, look out for the cracking view to the Atlantic from this one. Back on French soil now, and the Col de Marie Blanque, which the riders will crest on stage 5, a 7.7 kilometer climb with a steep average gradient of 8.6%. It's a first category ascent which is crested less than 20 kilometers from the finish, so it should prove testing in this year's edition. This is a well-used climb with plenty of history at the race. First used in 1978, it's been part of the Tour 15 times. The likes of Pedro Delgado, Richard Virenque, Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle and Neil Stevens have all won atop it. The race approaches from the western side this year, its steeper ascent, and kicks off a number of big ascents in the Pyrenees in the Tour's opening week. The Col d'Aspin is another one part of that Pyrenean whammy, a climb that well and truly finds itself in the Tour de France history book. This mountain has been raced on at the Tour 71 times, mainly because it connects two key climbs in the Pyrenees, the Tourmalet and the Peyresourde. First used in 1910, it became slightly infamous in 1950 when bottles and stones were thrown at Italian riders Gino Bartali and Fiorenzo Magni, causing them to withdraw from the race at the end of the stage. This year we'll see the riders tackle its steeper side, a 12-kilometer long ascent with an average gradient of 6.5% and gaining 779 meters in altitude, teeing the stage up for an absolutely brutal next climb. The Col du Tourmalet, one of the major climbs of the Tour de France and a real heavyweight of the race. This year will be the 89th time the climb has been used in the race, making it the most used mountain pass in Tour de France history. It takes the crown of highest paved mountain pass in the Pyrenees. The first rider to ascend it in the race takes home the Memorial Jacques Godet accolade and a €5,000 prize. That's to remember the Tour's second race director and French journalist. This year's edition will see it tackled from Saint-Marie-de-Campagne, a 17.2 kilometer long average gradient, 7.3%, and it gains 1,268 meters altitude in the process, topping out at an elevation of 2,115 meters. It's a big dog. And also, the Col d'Aspin and Tourmalet will feature in the Queen stage of the Tour de France Femme avec Zwift. So really pay attention to these two climbs in the Women's Tour de France, because that really, I think, is where the yellow jersey is going to be decided. Moving on to the Puy de Dôme, a climb which will see stage 9 finish atop the summit. 13.3 kilometers long with an average gradient of 7.7% and reaching an altitude of 1,415 meters. It's found right in the center of France, amongst the Massif Central. A lava dome is actually the youngest in a chain of volcanoes found in this region of the country. The Puy de Dôme is interesting because it's a truly historic ascent at this race. First included in 1952 when Fausto Coppi triumphantly raced up its slopes. It's seen its fair share of action over the years too, with Bernardino, Eddy Merckx, Raymond Poulidor and Jacques Anquetil all gracing the climb with memorable racing. However, it was last used at the race 35 years ago. The reason for that being is that it became increasingly difficult for the Tour's massive caravan to get up it, and a challenge that became harder by a newly constructed railway line narrowing the road. It's back now though in 2023 with race director Christian Prudhomme finding a way of reinventing this historic ascent. Heading over to the Alps now, and another key climb to look out for is the Grand Colombier, found in the Jura region of France and coming as a summit finish of stage 13 of this year's race. It's a HT climb, 17.4 kilometers long, average gradient 7.1%, and finishing at 1,501 meters altitude. First used in 2012 when Thomas Voigtler led over the summit, taking the stage victory by the conclusion of the day. This year we'll see perhaps a defining moment of the race take place on its slopes. Stage 13 is all about the Grand Colombier, with only 119 kilometers racing before starting the ascent to the finish. Legs will be relatively fresh and attacks may be particularly brutal. The Col de Joux Plane, 11.6 kilometers long with a tough average gradient of 8.6%. A horse category climb topping out at 1,691 meters altitude and coming just 12 kilometers from the finish of stage 14. Found in the Haute-Savoie region of the Alps, it's been featured 12 times in the Tour already. Jarlinson Pantano was the last rider to lead over the summit in 2016, with perhaps the biggest name being Marco Pantani to finish first over the top in 1997. This year's edition will also see one of the few mid-stage bonus second sprints at this year's race atop the Joux Plane. So be sure to expect the potential for a key fight to the top before a fast descent to the finish. Stage 15 sees another summit finish to Saint-Gervais, which is nestled in the shadow of Mont Blanc, Western Europe's highest mountain. The climb is 7.7 kilometers long, an average gradient of 7.7%. The first time the Tour finished here was in 1990 when Thierry Clavelet won after a 70-kilometer solo attack, taking the polka dot jersey at the same time. Recently, it was also the scene of Romain Bardet's solo win in the 2016 Tour, taking home a massive victory for France on stage 19 and later going on to finish second overall behind Chris Froome by the finish in Paris. Next up, an absolutely huge climb, the highest point of this year's Tour de France. The Col de la Loze is 28 kilometers long with an average gradient of 6%. So a real whopper. The leader over the top of it on stage 17 will take the Henri de Grange Prize, a memorial to the Tour's first director, usually given at the highest point of each year's Tour. This is potentially the climb of this year's race. It's only been used once before, back in 2020, when Michelangelo Lopez took victory. The reason behind its lack of history at the race is that the road is brand new, built as a bike path upwards from the Alpine resort of Méribel to complete the entire climb. As a result, the final 7 kilometers of bike path climb are narrow, steep with pitches of 20% and are relatively fast too, with brand spanking new tarmac. The finish comes at 2,304 meters altitude, before the race descends around 6 kilometers to the finish. It's gonna be a cracker, stay tuned, you don't want to miss that stage and that ascent. Last up then, the Ballon d'Alsace makes it into our top 10 climbs to look out for at the 2023 Tour de France. It'd be impossible to leave it off, to be honest, as it was the first official climb to be included in the Tour de France back in 1905. This year it comes on stage 20. The first ascent, a very punchy 133-kilometer stage with 6 categorised climbs no less. 11.5 kilometres long with an average gradient of 5.2%, Personally, I think this climb will kick off a very aggressive stage with last-ditch attacks thrown down in the closing stages of the race. Between 1905 and 1914, the race crossed Ballon d'Alsace every single year, and in total it's a climb that's been used 21 times in the Tour. Found in the Vosges region of France, it's also an absolutely stunning climb to ride, and coincidentally, I was also lucky enough to sleep in a mountain hut halfway up it with Marcel Kittel. So stay tuned to the attacks in the race, but also if you get a chance to ride it, definitely give it a visit on your bike. It's a bucket list one. There you go then, 10 key climbs to look out for at this year's Tour de France. Let us know in the comments what climbs you're most looking forward to watching, and if you've been lucky enough to ride any yourself, or maybe which ones you're thinking about giving a go. And don't forget to check out all the action on GCN Plus. This year's edition is going to be a thriller. Thanks for watching everyone, enjoy the tour, see you on the next video.